Hi, this is Daryl Myatt from Keller, Texas. Today is Tuesday, November 30th, 2010, last day of November. Can't believe it's December already tomorrow. Well, what about this WikiLeaks? Man, this story is everywhere. I mean, it's filled the internet. It's on Fox. It's on CNN. Hey, when they cover it, it must be a big story. I want to cover just a few things about that still before I continue to something else. But out of Arutsheva, one says WikiLeaks exposures demand policy change. Professor Eten Gilboa, who's a professor of communication and government at a university in Israel, addressed the exposure of sensitive documents by WikiLeaks. Speaking to a Arutsheva Daily Journal, Gilboa, who's an expert on U.S. matters and former advisor in the offices of the Prime Minister, Defense Minister, and Foreign Minister, said the publications weaken the United States, and a weak United States is not a good thing for Israel. He added that he is concerned by an image of the U.S. as a country under attack led by a weak president. Such an image, according to Gilboa, might very well lead to continued attacks on the Americans. Interesting. He said the very exposure of the documents is a serious failure on the parts of the U.S. government, a failure he believes that the U.S. is already paying for in the international arena, since it is now assumed by any diplomat or informant that they should contact their American counterparts. There is no legitimate concern that what they say would ultimately be made public. Whew. Wow. So, he goes on to say, Obama so far has been relatively soft on the enemy, and he should examine his strategy and support more allies, said Gilboa. The reconciliation with the Arab world failed. Now Obama needs to change his policy and present an action plan so that he can deal with two problems for which a solution has still not been found: the fundamentalist Islamist terrorists and the proliferation of nuclear countries such as Iran and North Korea. Yes, finally somebody that gets it. Benjamin Netanyahu went on to say about the WikiLeaks, he says, this is very dangerous, but now the whole world knows what the Arabs say about Iran. Several countries, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Yemen, several others said they don't want a nuclear Iran, and they're willing to do anything to keep them from getting them. So, it says that the whole Arab world is frightened at the prospect of a nuclear Iran. And Benjamin Netanyahu said more and more countries realize that Iran is the central threat, not Israel. If they start saying it publicly, it can pave the road to peace. He went on to say it can eliminate the theory that Israel is the obstacle to peace and show that we have mutual interests. He said our region has been hostage to a narrative that is the result of 60 years of propaganda which paints Israel as the greatest threat. In reality, leaders understand that that view is bankrupt. For the first time in history, there is an agreement that Iran is the real threat. Okay, what makes Iran the biggest threat is the fact what their leader believes. Mahmoud Ahmadinejad is one of those 12ers. He believes he has to create global chaos to usher in this 12th Imam, or Mahdi, and he's doing it by pursuing nukes. That's why they're a big threat. The world pretty much knows Israel has nukes. Okay, it's undisclosed. They probably have a little over 200 nukes. They've had them for quite some time. They have them for a defense purpose. They're not going on the offensive to attack anyone with them. Okay, they have them for defense. It's been said many times by Benjamin Netanyahu that if the Palestinians would lay down their arms, there would be peace. If Israel laid down their arms, there would be no Israel. I think no truer words have ever been spoken. Okay, shifting gears here, this out of Fox News. Russia positions warheads near NATO allies, fueling a U.S. concern. The U.S. believes Russia has been moving short-range tactical nuclear warheads to facilities near the North Atlantic Treaty Organization allies, the U.S. officials say, adding to questions in Congress about Russian compliance with a long-standing pledge ahead of possible vote on a new arms control treaty. U.S. officials say the movement of warheads to facilities bordering NATO allies appears to run counter to pledges made by Moscow starting in 1991 to pull tactical nuclear weapons back from frontier posts and to reduce their numbers. Okay, they've been working on this for quite some time to reduce nuclear arms. Here's another story out of Yahoo.com that says Russia's Medvedev warns of a new arms race. Wait, I thought we were trying to get rid of all these nukes and now we're going to start building up again? President Dmitry Medvedev warned today that a new arms race would erupt within the next decade unless Russia and the West forged an agreement to cooperate on building a missile defense system. In his annual State of the Nation address, Medvedev called for closer cooperation with the United States and the European Union, holding out the prospect of closer ties 2 decades after the Soviet Union's collapse ended the Cold War. He went on to say that, either we reach an agreement on missile defense and create a full-fledged joint mechanism of cooperation, or a new round of the arms race will begin. Oh boy. Isn't it fun hearing all this crazy stuff going on around the world? You know what? The greatest thing, though, is to trust in the Lord. Just the very center of the Bible. Psalm 118 verse 8 says, "Trust in the Lord and do not put your confidence in man." And I think that is why it's at the very center verse of the Bible. It's in the very heart of God's Word. Trust in God. Don't worry about what man's doing, because man is clearly a little whacked out. Here's a story out of Yahoo.com. Says North Korea boasts advance in nuclear program. Secretive North Korea boasted advances in its nuclear program today, making sure it held the world's attention, saying it had thousands of working centrifuges as pressure built on China to rein in its ally. Boy, this whole North and South Korea thing, it could erupt any moment into a pretty serious confrontation, and we need to pray for peace over there and hope it doesn't become something much worse, because if those two start firing nukes at each other and then China gets involved and we get involved, oh Lord help us. Anyway, I'm not going to read that whole story. Here's something else out of WorldNet Daily. A report warns Obama about new dark ages. It says airplanes would fall from the sky, cars would stop, networks would fail, computers, cell phones, TVs, none of these things would work. Okay, 2 national security experts have issued a report through the Heritage Foundation that warns Obama administration officials to start working now to prevent and mitigate the damage from an electromagnetic pulse attack on the United States because of the potential of unimaginable devastation. Okay, in case you're not familiar with this, the way this could be achieved is if someone were to launch a missile off either coast or both coasts, and at about the 200-mile level explode or detonate a nuclear warhead. This would pretty much wipe out our complete technical grid, electrical, utilities, cell phone communications, all kinds of, we would have no power, would have no electricity, would have no computer-driven components, no, even radios would stop working. And just earlier this month we saw this missile launched off the California coast, and everybody's going, what was that? Could have been a warning. A lot of people are saying that was Chinese made, and I'm not going to jump to conclusions. I'm not going to buy into any of what people are saying. If it's purely speculation, I'm not going to add to it. But we've been watching Iran and North Korea and some of these countries do their missile tests, and several times they've gone to the 200-mile mark and have blown up, and everyone said, oh, it was a failure. That was a failed test. Well, it depends on what they were testing for. If they were testing it to detonate at that level to do this very thing, then it was a success. And we need to be on the watch for that, and I'm glad at least that they're thinking about what they need to do to protect this country from it, because people didn't know anything about that missile. They're like, I don't know what it was. Even our own military, and that's scary. Anyway, here's something else out of Yahoo.com. U.S. says Iran got missile boost from North Korea. This out of Dubai, the United Arab Emirates. U.S. intelligence assessment concludes that Iran received advanced North Korean missiles capable of targeting Western Europe capitals and giving the Islamic Republic's arsenal a significantly further reach than previously disclosed. It says they got 19 of these BM-25 missiles that could carry a nuclear warhead. Great. So, things are just ratcheting up. Have you noticed all the stuff that's just bringing these things to a head lately? Here's a story you will never see on the mainstream media. You'll never hear it on Fox. You'll never hear it on CNN. You won't hear it on your local news. I'm getting it out of Israel Today. 180,000 Palestinians have been treated in Israeli hospitals. Okay? According to Israel's detractors, it is a cruel and racist nation determined to oppress the Palestinian Arabs as much as possible. But medical officials last week published another piece of evidence that Israel is anything but what its detractors say. Over the past year, 180,000 Arabs from the Palestinian-controlled territories were treated at Israeli hospitals. Now, I've read this whole report, and it doesn't mention anywhere any Israelis treated in Muslim or Arab hospitals. You want to know why? Because there's not any. Funny that, Israel treats their enemies by trying to treat them, make them well, get them better, yet what happens on the other side? Not the same treatment. Okay, as we're approaching the Christmas season, I want to give you a heads up. If you're going to buy your love, the 12 days of Christmas, the whole 5 golden rings and all that stuff, it's going to cost you a bit much more this year. It's gone up by a cost of 9.2% more this year. The whole tab for the whole Christmas price index is $23,439, nearly $2,000 more than last year, mostly because of the jump in gold prices. So those 5 gold rings are going to cost you quite a bit more. Not to mention the 4 calling birds, the 6 geese a laying, and all that fun stuff. Okay, enough silliness. I've been talking to you all month about the cross. Today's going to be the last installment. Out of John 19, verse 28 through 30, says, Jesus, knowing that all things were now accomplished, that the scripture might be fulfilled, he said, "It is finished." Now, in his final moments on the cross, Jesus cried out, "It is finished." Now, this undoubtedly caught the surrounding crowd off guard. I mean, imagine what those people that were within earshot might have thought. They're like, what's finished? What's he talking about? The phrase, "it is finished," is actually one word in the original Greek, teleo. It's used in the New Testament to describe the complete payment of a person's taxes, as in Matthew 17, verse 24, the completion of Christ's 1,000-year reign in the last days, found in Revelation 20, verse 7, and even the power of love to fulfill the law, found in James 2, verse 8. Teleo doesn't simply speak of finishing something. It actually refers to doing something so thoroughly and so perfectly that there's absolutely no room for improvement. Okay, that's the heart behind Christ's cry, and it's the reality represented by the cross. So when God does something, He does it to perfection, especially when it comes to what He did on the cross. Now, Christ's work on the cross isn't 99.9% complete, but absolutely and completely perfectly finished, lacking nothing. Moreover, it cannot be improved upon by anything that we could ever do or imagine. To try and do so would be a denial of Christ's declaration that it is finished. So all month long I've talked about the cross, and it's the culmination and completion of so many things, and every major theme in the Bible converges at the cross. But as I wind up this study, I hope you always remember that the cross is a representation of God's perfection. What took place there is something so complete, so thorough, and so perfect that it can never be added to or improved upon. It's perfect, it's complete, and it is finished. Nearly everyone knows what John 3:16 says, "For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in Him should not perish, but have everlasting life." But very few people know what John 3:17 says. It says, "For God did not send His Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through Him might be saved. Doesn't say will be saved, it says might be saved. Why? Because you have to accept the gift that God gives you. It's like when somebody hands you a gift, you have to reach out and receive it. It's the same with God's gift. Trust in Jesus Christ. He is the only way to God the Father.